My name is Elijah. I am 65 years old, and I have lived long enough to know that some words don't just echo in a room. They carve themselves into a man's soul. The night my son called me a loser, the air smelled of rosemary and roasted garlic, and the chandelier above the dining table cast a warm, golden light over polished silverware and carefully folded napkins. It was the kind of dinner setting that suggested stability, success, arrival. And in the middle of that glow, my son looked at me, really looked at me, and said loudly enough for the walls to remember, "You're a loser, Mom's new husband is." I didn't say anything. But inside me, something ancient cracked. The man I thought I was. I wasn't always the quiet man people see now. There was a time when my hands were strong, my back straight, my dreams loud. I met Sarah when I was 24 in a small bookstore downtown. She reached for the same novel I did and our fingers brushed. She laughed first. I fell first. We built a life that was simple, not spectacular. A 2-bedroom house with chipped paint on the shutters. A maple tree in the front yard that turned gold every October. A dog that chewed through 3 couches. When Daniel was born, I held him like he was made of glass and sunlight. I remember whispering into his tiny ear, "I'll always be here." I worked as a mechanic for nearly 40 years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Engines don't lie. They either run or they don't. If something's broken, you find it, you fix it, you move forward. I believed life worked the same way. I was wrong. The slow unraveling. When I was 58, the auto shop downsized. Technology changed. Business shifted. I was given a handshake and a severance check that felt smaller than the years I had given. I told myself I'd bounce back, but at that age, doors don't swing open easily. They creak, they hesitate. I found part-time work, temporary contracts, odd repairs in neighbors' garages, but I could feel something else unraveling, not just finances. Respect. Sarah began to look at me differently, not cruelly, not even angrily, just differently, as if I had become a version of myself she didn't recognize. Then there was Mark. Mark from accounting. Mark with the pressed shirts and investment portfolios. Mark who spoke about growth and opportunities and future positioning. When Sarah told me she wanted a divorce, she cried. "I feel stuck, Elijah," she said. I nodded, even though my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. Mark married her a year later. And just like that, I was no longer husband, no longer provider, just Elijah. The dinner invitation. Daniel invited me to dinner 6 years after the divorce. "We're all getting together," he said casually. "You, Mom, Mark, it'll be good." Good. I wore my best button-down shirt, the blue one Sarah once said brought out my eyes. I ironed it twice. I even polished my old boots. When I arrived, the house stunned me. It wasn't just bigger, it was deliberate, everything placed with purpose, modern art on the walls, a kitchen island larger than my entire old dining space. Mark greeted me warmly. "Elijah, good to see you." He meant it, that was the hard part. Daniel looked confident, successful. He had his mother's drive, and lately I noticed some of Mark's posture. Dinner began politely enough, talk of markets, real estate trends, career growth. I listened. I have never minded listening. But then something shifted. Sarah mentioned how Mark had helped Daniel navigate an investment decision. "He just knows how to handle these things," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, he's built something real." Something real. I felt smaller with every passing second. Then Daniel looked directly at me. "You know what, Dad?" His voice cut through the room. "You're a loser, Mom's new husband is." The word hung in the air like smoke. Sarah gasped. Mark muttered, "Daniel." But Daniel continued. "You never took risks, you stayed small, you settled. Mom had to settle." Settle? I could have defended myself. I could have listed every overtime shift, every vacation we skipped to pay tuition, every night I stayed up waiting for him to come home safe. But I saw something in his eyes that stopped me. Fear. So I said nothing. I stood slowly. "It's okay," I said quietly. "I should head home." And I walked out with what dignity I could gather. The night that followed, the drive home felt longer than usual. When I got inside my small house, I sat in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I let the silence settle over me. Was I a loser? I didn't have investments, no beach house, no retirement portfolio worth bragging about. But I had changed diapers. I had coached Little League. I had stayed up through fevers and heartbreaks. Does the world measure those things? At 65 years old, you begin to understand something most people miss. The world measures volume. Life measures depth. But that night, even I wasn't sure which scale mattered more. The silence between us. Daniel didn't call for 2 weeks. Those were heavy days. I replayed the dinner in my mind. I wondered if my silence had looked like guilt, like confirmation. Maybe I had failed in ways I never saw. Perhaps I should have taken bigger risks. Maybe I should have chased promotions, moved cities, earned more. But then I would remember Daniel's first baseball game, the way he scanned the bleachers until he found me. If I had been traveling for work, would he have found someone else? That thought steadied me. The coffee shop conversation. When Daniel finally called, his voice was tight. "Dad, can we talk?" We met at a quiet diner. He looked exhausted, not physically but internally, like a man trying to outrun himself. "I shouldn't have said that," he began. "Why did you?" I asked gently. He rubbed his temples. "I'm terrified of being average. At work, it's constant competition. Everyone's climbing, everyone's hustling. Mark, he seems fearless, strategic. I compare myself to him, and then I look at you and I panic." "Why?" "Because I'm scared I'll end up small." There it was again. Small. I leaned forward. "Daniel, do you think I'm small?" He hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. So I told him something I had never told anyone. When I was 35, I was offered a regional manager position. It paid nearly double, but it required travel weeks at a time. You were 7. You had just started baseball. I turned it down. He blinked. "You never told me." "I didn't need applause," I said softly. "I just needed to be there." He swallowed hard. "I didn't build an empire," I continued, "but I built presence, I built trust, I built you." His eyes filled. For the first time since the dinner, I saw my son, not the competitor. Not the ambitious professional, but the boy who once fell asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. When the tables turned. Life wastes no time teaching humility. 6 months later, Daniel lost his job during a corporate restructuring. He called me late at night. "I don't know who I am without this job," he said. "Come over," I replied. When he arrived, he looked broken. "I feel like a failure." I handed him a cup of coffee and said, "Then you finally understand something important." He looked confused. Failure is not losing a job. Failure is losing yourself. He stayed with me for 2 months. We cooked simple meals. We fixed up my old truck together. We talked, really talked. One evening, as we watched the sunset from my porch, he said quietly, "I think I was measuring success by fear." I nodded. "Fear makes you chase what shines," I said. "Peace lets you value what lasts." A public apology. A year later, Daniel invited both me and Mark to a small gathering at his apartment. Halfway through the evening, he stood up. "I need to say something," he said. The room quieted. "A while ago, I called my father a loser. I was wrong." He looked at me directly. My dad showed up, every game, every crisis, every bad decision I made. When I lost my job, he didn't lecture me. He opened his door. His voice cracked. That's not losing, that's strength. Mark raised his glass. To Elijah, he said sincerely, a man who understands what matters. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not pride. Peace. The moral of my story. Now, at 65 years old, I sit on my porch most evenings and watch the sun dip below the horizon. I think about that dinner often. Being called a loser hurt. But silence saves something greater than pride. Hear what I've learned. Success without presence is hollow. Money without character is fragile. Comparison is a thief that steals joy from both sides. And sometimes the strongest response is restraint. If you are ever measured by someone else's scale, remember this. The world counts numbers. Love counts sacrifices. The world applauds visibility. Children remember availability. I am Elijah. I am 65 years old. I have been unemployed, divorced, compared, judged. I have been called a loser. But I showed up. And in the end, the only scoreboard that matters is the one written in the hearts of the people you love. If that makes me a loser in the world's eyes, then I have never been more victorious.